Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at some rumors out of Montreal. There's been a lot of stuff going on with the organization, obviously with the new management, a new president of hockey operations. You've got a lot of changes in Montreal. Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes coming into the organization has drastically changed the outlook, the perspective, and, of course, the future direction of this team. Not to mention they have a new head coach behind the bench, as Dominic Ducharme was let go. I know Habs fans will get me on that. So Marty St. Louis is back there now. So it's just a different mindset in this room. And I think we're going to see some interesting things happen in terms of transactions, guys going to free agency that are leaving, guys that could get traded, and new guys that may be coming in, whether that's a trade or via free agency or trade or the draft. A lot of things are going to be happening in Montreal. So we're going to start off with some of the guys that are already in-house in Montreal. And the first thing we're going to go over, and this is actually a stat. So the first time in NHL history that a Stanley Cup finalist finishes dead last the following season. Guys, the NHL just hit their 100th season. I think it was 2 years ago, last year, 2 years ago, something like that. It's been a record-breaking year in Montreal, so I wanted to start off with that. And now we're starting to get into some legitimate stuff. This is from Carey Price, so we're going from the Carey Price angle to start this off. I know the sentiment out there is, at this point, he is untradeable. Like, I mean, you consider in the goalie market, the average goaltender is making around $5 million. Carey Price, who's not healthy and really not even in the lineup, is making double that. And then you consider the fact that you're looking at a goalie that, at best case scenario, you retain 50%, he would be making $5 million. And there's better goalies at that $5 million price tag in the market than a guy like Carey Price. It's going to be, if there is a market at all for him, it's going to be extremely difficult. And then there's obviously the PR if they were to trade him. Carey Price and a first-round pick for future considerations, I don't think that would go well in Montreal, right? So this is from Stu Cowan. A trade involving Carey Price seems, quote-unquote, impossible at this point. There was talk I think even last year, 2 years ago, maybe him to the St. Louis Blues. Montreal didn't really want to do it. I think there was some pushback from the St. Louis Blues organization. There was the possibility he could go for free, basically, to the Seattle Kraken. They decided to go with Philip Grubauer in free agency. And again, that is the disparity here, is the goalie market. It doesn't make sense to have a $10.5 million goaltender on your roster. It just doesn't make sense. You're seeing it right now in Florida with the Florida Panthers, giving 10.5 to Bobrovsky, right? It doesn't make sense. And that's kind of what you're looking at here. And that's kind of been the situation with Price. A lot of teams are going more with this mentality of having a 1A and a 1B. You spend $5 million on each. Perfect. You have your $10 million instead of putting $10 million into one goalie. You're asking for a lot there. So this is also from Stu Cowan on Jeff Petrie. Jeff Petrie will draw trade interest from teams with salary cap flexibility this offseason. I think this is an interesting one. I think Jeff Petrie is the kind of guy that I think numerous teams would be interested in. And looking at cap friendly, some of the teams that have a little bit more cap space, could he be the guy that plays with Owen Power? The Buffalo Sabres have the most cap space in the National Hockey League at just under $14 million of cap space. That could potentially be a destination there. Now, I do think Jeff Petrie does have say in his contract, so that may void that possibility, but that could be talked about. The Detroit Red Wings, again, looking to have guys for next year to play with Simon Edvinsson, who could be a rookie next year. Potentially playing, kind of the replacement to Mark Stahl, playing alongside Mo Seider. I think Jeff Petrie could be a good fit there. Again, these are teams in the division, so that may be the disparity in terms of making this trade, but they are pretty good fits. Depending on where Nashville goes, if they see themselves as a playoff team next year, things haven't gone well in the postseason for them this year. So do they see themselves as a team that could add? Maybe they go for Jeff Petrie. New Jersey, I think, is another team you could look at. They may look to replenish some guys like PK Subban in that top six. You bring in a guy like Petrie, that could work. They are spending a lot of money on that blue line between Graves and Hamilton and, would be Jeff Petrie. But there is, again, that the idea that could be on the table. The Islanders could be looking for a defenseman. So there's a lot of teams here that could be in that market. I think that there will be a pretty seismic market here. And then this coming now onto the Shea Weber situation. You realize these are all ways of the Canadiens trying to clear cap space. And I'm actually looking at Cap Friendly right now. The most popular active NHL players in this order from least to most talked about. Patrick Laine, Taylor Hall, Jack Eichel, Connor McDavid, Carey Price, we just talked about him, Alex Ovechkin, Austin Matthews, and Shea Weber. That's right. Shea Weber is more popular right now in terms of active players than Matthews and Ovechkin, who are in the playoffs right now and just had incredible seasons. That shows you how much people are talking about Shea Weber and Carey Price, that the fact that they are in there. So this is, I figured I'd show that, and I wasn't even planning to show you guys that, but that, I'm looking at it right now. So from Stu Cowan again, the Montreal Canadiens will attempt to trade Shea Weber's contract this offseason. No real surprise here. We've talked about this in the past. You look at Shea Weber's contract. He signed this deal, a 14-year, $110 million contract. He signed this back in the summer of 2012. He's currently right now, in what will be his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He is in the 10th year of this 14-year deal. So starting in the fall, he will still have 4 more years on this contract at just under $8 million per season. So again, the good news is his base salary, which is $6 million right now, goes to $3 million next year. And the final 3 years is $1 million. So in terms of actual payout, his contract does become much less expensive than what it's been. So I think that is how the Canadiens are going to kind of get themselves out of this. So in terms of salary cap hit, it will be just under $8 million. So for teams like Arizona that need cap space and teams like that, and they're not actually paying that out. They're going to be paying $1 million. So they do save that money. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. I do think that is what's going to happen. Expect Montreal to give up a pretty good player to do that, though. And I think that's where things get a little more... You got to be careful with this, because is it going to be potentially a guy that's already maybe on his way out, like a Michael Pezzetta? Is that enough for Arizona? Maybe that's not even enough, right? Maybe you need to throw in one of those young defensemen that's been very good this year. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this Weber thing plays out. You don't really want to trade your draft picks, but I don't think Montreal is going to have a choice. They do have a lot of draft picks, which is the good thing. They have 2 first-round picks this year, 2 second-round picks next year, 2 second-round picks in this year's draft, 3 third and fourth round draft picks each, respectively. So they have 6 picks in the 3rd and 4th round. They have a couple depth draft picks. So they can move. Like, if they have to, they might have to trade, let's say, Calgary or Florida's first-round pick this year or next in order to get rid of Shea Weber's deal, that's probably going to fall somewhere between 20 and 30. 20 and 32 in the draft this year. So depending on how that goes, that could be on the table here in terms of moving on from Shea Weber. Guys, the Montreal Canadiens, truth be told, they have spent the most money out of any organization in the National Hockey League this season. Their final cap hit at the end of the season, $92,493,917 spent on this franchise this year, and they ended with the worst record in the National Hockey League, which leads us into the next thing for them, which is the draft. And the draft is going to be huge for this Canadiens franchise. You look at their lineup right now, and this is starting to lead us into the summer. I know we're getting there, but you look at their lineup right now, and this is to end the season. You have Suzuki, Jake Evans, Christian Dvorak, and Ryan Poehling as your 4 centers. I don't think that's realistic, that's going to be the case next year. Well, unfortunately, it may be what they look like. But we could be seeing a situation here where they go after somebody. And I'm not even saying in free agency necessarily. If Claude Giroux's available, I think at this point, he may be looking at Ottawa. As crazy as that sounds, again, I think that depends on how Florida does. I think there's a couple of other factors to remember here. If he gets a ring in Florida, he may not have the mentality that he has to go cup chasing next year. So there's just so much here that we have to look at. So like I said, Suzuki, Evans, Dvorak, and Poehling, you definitely need to improve that. And that's not a shot, really. Again, Suzuki is a first-line center. Maybe not this early. I think that's the problem they're running into. They kind of did, some fans may disagree with me, but this is kind of what they did with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. They rushed him in to the top 6 when he wasn't ready. And centers usually have to develop there. They have to be in the games and grow that confidence and get that going. Suzuki is a different level, so I see him as sort of an exemption to that. But it still hurts his development when he is playing the top lines in the league night after night after night on a bad hockey team. And again, this is where you run the risk of continuing the cycle that they've had for the last couple of years. So Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes, they have to figure out guys that can fill out this roster down the middle, bringing speed and skill to move the puck other than Nick Suzuki. Right, and I think we've seen the Dvorak situation. It really did not work this year. Hopefully he bounces back next year. That was definitely a failed experiment, even though they're paying him for the next little while. So they need to get a center, right? So if you're looking at the draft, there is the possibility that there's plenty of guys available. Now, obviously, Shane Wright is the choice, right? That's the guy that you want. But realistically, they won't be drafting first overall. Realistically, they will be drafting probably 4th or 5th overall. So you look at the mock draft board right now in terms of the tankathon.com. Again, different sites have different views on it. You're looking at the top prospects. It's Shane Wright, Yurov Slavkovsky, who is a winger, but he can play center. Simon Nemec, that's a defenseman. Logan Cooley and Matthew Savoie, who are each centers. So worst case, if you don't, more than likely you won't get the first overall pick. You're more likely looking at definitely having one of or both of Logan Cooley or Matthew Savoie available. Now, they aren't in the same tier as Shane Wright. Ideally, you get Shane Wright or Slavkovsky, but that's not realistic. That's not how this is probably going to turn out. So, worst case, like I said, if you're looking at it, you're looking at Shane Wright, Logan Cooley, or Matthew Savoie. I think those are the top 3 guys that the Montreal Canadiens should be targeting. And again, if they do get the second pick, I wouldn't be surprised if they go with Yurov Slavkovsky or Logan Cooley. I think there's going to be that debate there. But again, it's going to be kind of how things crumble, because let's say the number 2 team really, really badly needs a defenseman, and they end up taking Simon Nemec. Now you could see Slavkovsky fall to number 3. And if Montreal has number 3, they might have more of a decision if they go with Slavkovsky or one of these other guys, if Slavkovsky is higher up on their board. So, overall, I think it's going to be a huge draft for them. They need to add some centers, and it doesn't end there. Obviously, the rumors around Claude Giroux and free agency, yes, that's going to be there. So that's going to be talked about, as well as maybe a guy via trade. And this trade, again, it's a little far-fetched, but it's really not. So this is from Elliot Friedman. If the Jets can't re-sign Pierre-Luc Dubois long-term, expect his name to be out there a bit. So that was kind of the, dipping the toe in the water. And now we heard some more rumors from Marco D'Amico. If Pierre-Luc Dubois becomes available this offseason, the Canadiens are expected to be connected. Pierre-Luc Dubois just seems like a great fit there. The reason is he can play center, and ideally, he could be the first-line center ahead of Nick Suzuki going into next season. Allow Nick Suzuki to develop. Don't force him into a position he's not ready for. You put Pierre-Luc Dubois on the top line. You find a guy in free agency, whoever that might be. Honestly, I think a guy like Vlad Namestnikov would be a great guy to add in there. You have Vlad Namestnikov and, say, Mike Hoffman on that top line. And then you move Caulfield and Suzuki down together. And then you have Gallagher or Anderson on their other wing. So I think this would allow them now to put Jake Evans or Ryan Poehling to the wing. It allows you to have a little bit more center depth that can play on the wing. And it allows you, again, because some of these guys are not returning. You're looking at some guys that are pending UFAs for the Montreal Canadiens. They do have a couple in the bottom six. Tyler Pitlick, I don't expect him to come back. Matthew Perreault, he won't be coming back. And Laurent Dauphin, it seems more like a guy that will be playing in the American Hockey League in Laval. So, and then you have Michael Pezzetta, who may or may not come back. He is a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. So, again, it's kind of, and Rem Pitlick. So you have the two Pitlicks. You have Tyler and Rem. So let's say they get rid of the Pitlicks, they get rid of Perreault, they get rid of Dauphin. Well, now that allows you to bring in guys like Vlad Namestnikov, like a Pierre-Luc Dubois, who easily is an upgrade. Do we see a little bit of Jesse Yelenin next year? Yelenin is 22 years old right now. He'll be on the final year of his entry-level deal. They might want to see what they have in this kid. Cameron Hillis, again, he'll be on the final year of his entry-level deal. That's another guy I think they'd want to look at. So there's a lot of different options here for them. In terms of their forward group. And I think there's a lot of possibility, a lot of depth. Again, they've acquired a lot of draft picks. They've also acquired a lot of prospects. I think this is a really good spot for Montreal right now. And I think Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton did a really good job at the deadline again. But now you could be looking at a spot where, unfortunately, you might be going backward with some of that draft capital to get rid of Gallagher. Again, I don't think you should be getting rid of Gallagher. I don't like the way I said that, but you're going to move on. You're trying to shed salary, right, in order to bring in the guys you want. In order to bring in a Pierre-Luc Dubois, you're going to have to move a Shea Weber or a Carey Price or a Jeff Petrie or a Mike Hoffman or a Christian Fischer. I don't think they want to trade Josh Anderson. They really like Josh Anderson. You're going to have to trade some of those guys out, or a Brendan Gallagher, right? You're looking at having, in order to bring in guys like Dubois, you have to move guys out. And again, I think that is going to be critical for the Montreal Canadiens. I think they're going to want a clean slate. I think they're going to want to move as many guys as they possibly can without mortgaging too much of the future. And that's where, again, let's say they traded Carey Price and a first-round pick this year, right? Let's say that second first-round pick, and then Shea Weber and Florida's pick next year. Again, now you're back to the two first-round picks you have, your own. So the Montreal Canadiens kind of lose that, but again, they shed the salary. But is it worth it? Because Montreal's going to be rebuilding. Do they have to shed that salary? Is it worth it? If you can move a guy like Gallagher without sacrificing giving up a first-round pick, you'd probably prefer to do that, right? So that's kind of the debate that Gordon and Hughes are going to have this summer. I think we need to get sort of a timetable on Carey Price. Nobody's trading for Carey Price right now because we don't know what his future looks like. Is he going to retire? Like, those are the sort of things that, if you're Montreal, you have to get those things answered. I know they try to keep the details and kind of a lot of the limelight out, especially even Shea Weber. Shea Weber and Carey Price, for most of the season, we really didn't know their status. Shea Weber was very rarely, and Carey Price for that matter, they were both very rarely in Montreal. Whether they were going to, doctor visits and stuff like that, they were going to New York. They were going to Montreal. They were all over the place. So, again, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of Pierre-Luc Dubois coming to the Montreal Canadiens down the center? And if it's not Pierre-Luc Dubois, who else do you think could help this Montreal Canadiens team? Because on the in terms of defense, I think they're going to keep things fairly the same. Again, I'm kind of hesitating when I say that because, again, if you're going to trade guys like Weber and Petrie, it does change the equation very quickly. Joel Edmondson, but we're going to see a lot more of the young guys, Alexander Romanov, Justin Barron, Jordan Harris, who came into the season late. Again, that's a guy I could see Shea Weber and Jordan Harris getting traded to Arizona in order to move out his contract. But again, you're mortgaging the future for cap space to do what? To spend it on now. So that's something that Montreal really has to figure out. But let me know what you guys think. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.